Okay, so today we're going to do some dividing of fractions, and we have 4 different methods. The first method, we'll call it using diagrams. So I want to take and I want to actually divide 1 3/8 by 3/4. So first I got to locate 1 3/8 here, so let me turn this into a pen for a second. And let's go with blue. So if this is 0, and this is 1, and this is 2, and I start to break this up into 8ths. So I gotta split it in half first. I'm gonna split this one in half too. And we're gonna split this up into quarters as best we can. This is just a rough sketch. And then we're gonna split it up into 8ths. So 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, 8/8 is one whole. And then we're gonna be at 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, 8/8, which is the second whole, 2 whole. So the value that we are trying to figure out is going to be 1 3/8. So we want to go from here over to here. Here's 1 3/8. So let me draw a brace like this. And this is going to be our 1 3/8. So we need to divide this up by things that have the length of 3/4. Well, let's see, 3/4. If I were to multiply that by a giant 1 so that I could get 8ths, I would have to multiply this by 2 under 2, which is a total of 6/8. So the first value of 3/4 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6/8. I got to go all the way to there. So this is going to be my first piece. This is 3/4. I have one whole group of 3/4 from here to there. Now that 3/4 I said was 6/8. We proved it over there to the left. And so now we have to figure out how much is left over to get all the way over to here. So it looks to me like 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8. So the distance from here to here is 5/8 that's left over. Now I've already used one whole 3/4. How many of the 3/4 can I get out of 5/8? Well, since 3/4 is 6/8, I cannot get a whole group of 3/4 out of 5/8. So I have to figure that out now. So the part of 6/8 that is 5/8 is actually 5/6. So I can reason then that 1 3/8 divided by 3/4 is equal to 1 whole 3/4 and 5/6. Because if I take my 5/8 and I divide them by 6/8, that's basically like saying 5 divided by 6, right? 5 objects divided by 6 objects that are the same object, 8ths. So that's going to give me 5/6. So that is how I'm getting 1 5/6, our answer. Thank you for listening. So now we are going to do more fraction division. This time we're going to use common denominators. And this is kind of one of my favorite methods to do division of fractions. So if I have 1 3/8 divided by 3/4, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a proper fraction. So 8 times 1 plus 3, if we have 8 times 1 plus 3, that would give us 11/8 divided by 3/4. So I need to take 11/8 and divide them by 3/4. Well, from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and come up with a common denominator for the 8 and the 4. And we usually only get common denominators for adding and subtracting, but it turns out with division, it's going to make something very easy. So a common multiple of 8 and 4 would be 8. Let's use 8. So if I take this 3/4 and I multiply it by a giant 1 that can get me into my 8ths. Oh, like 2 under 2, then I'm left with 11/8 divided by 6/8. Now, similar to multiplying fractions, you can multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators. Division is just multiplication's tricky pal. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide the numerators and divide the denominators. So the answer to this problem is 11 divided by 6 over 8 divided by 8. Well, 8 divided by 8 is just 1. So this whole expression is really equal to 11/6. Now, if you're not quite sure what I'm saying over here, this is me right here. You can tell because I got a weird eye there. Okay. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I have 11/8 divided by 6/8, this is the same as saying 11 divided by 6 and 8 divided by 8. Similar to how we multiply fractions. We can divide them this way too. We just don't always do it this way. So 8 divided by 8, that's 1. 11 divided by 6 is 11/6 because we talked about that earlier. And so we know that this is equal to 11/6. So if I want to make this into then a mixed number, I could take 6 into 11. Which is going to be equal to 1 whole with 5/6 remaining. 1 and 5/6. Thank you for listening. Dividing fractions by a supergiant 1 is my third method here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to first start by changing this into a fraction divided by a fraction. So 8 times 1 plus 3 is going to be 11/8 divided by 3/4. Now, I'm going to take this, I'm going to write it as a compound fraction. So I'm going to take this as 11/8 over, because we know that the division sign is like the fraction sign, over 3/4. Now my goal is to multiply that ugly compound fraction by something that is a giant 1 that will let the denominator turn into a 1. So let's see here. Let's make a 1 out of this. We're going to multiply by 1 so that we don't change the value of the problem. Wow, that was squiggly. And so 3/4, if I were to multiply that by 4/3, I would get 12/12. And 12/12 is a form of 1, so the denominator would turn into a 1. But to be fair, to make this actually a big monster giant 1, I have to multiply the numerator by 4/3 also. So what I'm left with is I'm left with 11/8 times 4/3 all over 12/12. 3 times 4, 4 times 3. Well, there's a giant 1, another giant 1. And so I'm just left with the math problem 11/8 times 4/3, which is equal, when I multiply my numerators and multiply my denominators, to 44/24. And those each simplify. Let's see, I can simplify 44/24. I can divide these by 4 and these by 4, and that will give me 11/6, which is familiar. So that's 1 and 5/6. So that's the supergiant 1 method. Now within that supergiant 1 method, did you happen to notice something where we multiplied by a reciprocal, which is right here? We started off with a fraction division, and we multiplied by its reciprocal by the end. The actual math problem itself is the reciprocal, which brings us to the method that you learned before. We'll call this method 4. So this is invert and multiply. So first step, obviously, we want to make this into a fraction. 8 times 1 plus 3 is 11/8 divided by 3/4. And you might have heard a teacher say, oh, I don't know, how about when dividing fractions, don't ask why, flip the second fraction and multiply. Or they'll say invert and multiply. I've heard lots of silly things, but that idea is not a trick. That idea comes from the supergiant 1 method. This invented the invert and multiply method. So let's take a look at it. When multiplying my fractions, I'm going to take my 11/8, that never flips, and we're going to multiply it by the reciprocal of 3/4, which is 4/3, to get 44 over 24. When I divide these both by 4, simplify them by 4, I get 11 over 6, which is 1 5/6. Now this is probably one of the most efficient ways to do it. In fact, I think that method 4, the invert and multiply, and the common denominator method are both very, very efficient. The other two are wise. You're wise to learn them and know how they work, but the invert and multiply one and the common denominator division are my favorite. Thanks for listening.